Welcome to another full tilt episode of ARG Presents. I am Amigo Aaron, joined as always by a man simply known as the king of the gutter ball, the Brent.
That's really more bowling than pinball.
Oh, the alley ball, whatever you call it.
Out lanes.
Failure. King of failure. How about that? That's what you get for questioning my intro.
That seems a little harsh.
Last week, if you joined us, we spun the wheel. We made the deal.
Yep.
And this week, we'll be looking at games from the late 1980s pinball world.
Yes.
What do you think about that, Brent?
You know, the late 80s was a strange time for pinball. It was a dip in production and revenue before the Addams Family spike, but it was still a good time. A lot of good machines.
Yes, the 80s, the late 80s in particular.
Yes.
Of course, we had moved completely out of the mechanical era, the electromechanical era of pinball, which would pretty much fade out in the late 70s and the very early 80s.
Yes.
And really, in the pinball world, you look at pinball in two particular ways. You've got your EM machines or electromechanical machines, and these are the machines that date back to the beginning of pinball.
Yes.
And in around 77 or so, you started seeing your first solid state pinball machines, which were pinball machines that had circuit boards and did away with a lot more of the mechanical aspects of pinball. And those pretty much ran until the end of the last
early
age,
80s.
where you saw into like really around the late 90s of pinball, where they made a valiant last effort to resurrect pinball with a system called Pinball 2000, which we'll talk about briefly, and then its untimely semi-demise before it sort of rebirth, and it's pinball's a very strange. It was on life support, wasn't it, for a long time?
Yeah. But I'll tell you, since with all of the tournaments that run now, and where pinball has really become a little bit, unfortunately, a rich person's hobby. Reflecting back on their glory days, you don't find pinball machines on locations anymore for the most part because they're harder to maintain than say a ticket game.
You see more than you used to, though. You don't see them in arcades.
Sure. But you don't see arcades anymore.
You see them in movie theaters and
somewhat
and places like that. I almost always see one anytime I go to the theater.
The thing is they don't make the revenue versus how difficult they are to maintain against something like a claw machine or a ticket game, which is the reason why they've faded out and they've really become privately owned for a vast majority of the machines.
Thank God we're incredibly wealthy.
Yeah. Hey, we are proof that you don't actually need money. You just need to be able to accept machines that aren't pristine,
or to have the dogged determination to drive 1,000 miles to go pick up your machine.
Well,
also
250, I think was our farthest, but yeah.
So I wanted to get into. I'm not going to get into a whole history of pinball today, but as it happens, we both ended up picking games that came from the same company, and they were sort of the premier pinball company. So I thought it'd be interesting to just take a quick look at them. And the company we're talking about is Williams Pinball. Now, today, Williams Pinball is not around, is it, Brad?
Nope. They faded with the...
They became WMS Industries, and they were bought by... they were actually bought, and I think it was Scientific American, and they make slot machines now.
Yes.
Pretty much gambling stuff, almost in its entirety. That's what they do. They haven't made a pinball machine since their last one, which was a Pinball 2000. But they've got a long and storied career, actually, in terms of pinball. They've been around for basically forever. So, in 1943, Henry Williams founded Williams Pinball, or Williams Manufacturing at the time, in Chicago, Illinois. Now, Chicago, then and now, is known as the pinball capital of the world. Chicago had a lot of different people making pinball there, including Bally, Midway, and also Chicago Coin. Made all their made their stuff there as well. It's funny. I looked at the first bunch of machines that Williams ever made. So get this. I thought this was interesting. The first 7 products they ever made, they did a fortune-telling machine, which that was something you could do back then, right? Right. They made 2 electromechanical games, Periscope and Liberator, and we saw Periscope varieties and variants for all the times. They made a novelty game called Zingo, and then they made a pinball conversion of Flat Top, and another one called, I love the name of this one, Circus Romance. You do the math on that one. Now, and then they did one called Laura. Now, the funny thing about these are all conversions that they made by purchasing older machines and then changing elements of artwork in the playfield. And they were doing this stuff because during the wartime, it was tough to get materials.
Yeah, so they reskinned them.
That's right. Effectively, yeah, that's what they did. So I thought that was
that is interesting.
Now, the fellow Williams that founded the company, not an idiot. Newsflash. Stanford engineering grad.
Yeah.
So he knew a thing or two. He's the first man to come up with the tilt mechanism in a pinball machine.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, if you've ever played a pinball machine and beat the tar out of it, and it warned you, and then it ended the game with a tilt, you could thank him for that. He didn't want you guys destroying his machines and us. And we've got some friends that will beat the tar out of a machine now and again. So, Williams made pinball machines all through the 40s, 50s, and into the 60s. And so that was their thing. They made pinball. Well, and they also did novelty stuff too.
Sure.
So in the 70s, they saw Atari making money with Pong, right? Who didn't, right? And so they had to get them a piece of that. So get this. First they went into preliminary negotiations with Magnavox, which I think is interesting, of the Odyssey and Odyssey 2 fame, before they finally subcontracted the Magneto Corporation of America. Oh, you don't want to mess with those guys. And they created a game called Paddleball. Yeah. This was a not subtle version of Pong. So Williams finally, of course, now Williams entered the pinball and video game world. They ended up coming up with some of their own hits. And their first big hit Williams had in the arcades that was a video game was Defender.
Yes.
1980, which was a game that had 400 million buttons on it.
No stick, all button.
Yeah, then they went on to make a lot of other video games you've heard of. They did Stargate, which was the Defender sequel. They also did Joust, Robotron 2084, Sinistar, and a licensed Moon Patrol. So those are all great games.
Yes, every one of them.
Those are when you think of Williams video games, those are the ones that pop into your mind. So now get this. I thought this was interesting. Just one more touch on their video game side. So what was going on in '83? Do you remember?
83. Oh, I mean, that was the beginning of the arcade boom.
Well, it was the rise of Laserdisc too.
Okay.
So Williams, and boy, let me tell you something. Laserdisc brought down a lot of people, and they almost brought Williams down. I had forgotten about this game. They did a game called Star Rider. Do you remember Star Rider? I don't think I've ever played it. I've never heard of it. Python Angelou, who actually worked on these games, and we'll get into him later, he worked on this game extensively. And guess what? It lost the company $50 million US. So
I guess everybody was chasing Dragon's Lair, right?
Well, I mean, a lot of companies took a bath on the Laserdisc era. There were very few laser hits. I mean, think about it.
Oh, Dragon's Lair, Space
Ace was not nearly the popular machine that Dragon's Lair was.
No.
And Dragon's Lair 2, even less than that.
Right.
So even the guys that led the way, I mean, what is the all-time most playable laser game? I can't even, I mean, what would it, I mean, but I say playable, I mean something that's
mean that isn't just hit directions?
I mean, it's probably something like, gosh, I would say Mach 5 would be the one that comes to mind. And it's the laser games.
And it's just a shooter.
They come in two varieties: the cartoon sort of thing, and then you've also got the moving graphics over a scrolling animated background.
Interactive movie and interactive background.
But we've got off on a tangent.
We have. All right.
So let's get back to pinball. So Williams put out its first solid-state pinball all the way back in '76. With a game, with a game called Aztec, and they released another game called Grand Prix. Now I've actually played Aztec, and they finished up their running any electromechanical games in '77 with a game called Wild Card, which is kind of a neat game. I've also played that one. So these games in the '70s, I want to get some numbers out here. Williams was releasing games in the '70s, and like for example, Hot Tip came out in '77.
Okay,
it sold about almost 5,000 units, which was a pretty good run.
That's an awesome run for pinball,
right? But Williams started a great run in about in the late 70s, and of course, the pinball changed and got exponentially more interesting. I mean, in some people's eyes, I know some people are real tried and true EM fans, but sound and game varieties and rule sets got a lot more complicated when electromechanical pinballs were phased out and they brought in solid states, because you could have you've got the access to basically effectively computer stuff, and you can actually do more math and have more save state, have it save what's going on.
It wasn't just if-then statements of the EM era.
So one of the last big game of the 70s for them was a classic game called Gorgar.
Yes.
Now, Gorgar is an interesting pinball machine. That's a great Williams machine. I remember playing this one back. The art is sort of like a Conan theme. It's awesome. Hot chick, big muscular barbarian. There's a big demon on the back glass and on the play field. And this game would talk.
Yes.
And the Gorgar would be like, "I, Gorgar, beat you." He would taunt you and stuff.
And it was decent. Everyone was playing around with voice in this era. Gorgar was very understandable.
This was the first. Gorgar was the first pinball with a synthetic voice.
Yeah.
Something else that made Gorgar interesting, just to touch on it, is Williams was at a point where it wasn't sure how people were going to accept this new sort of sound. So Gorgar is a machine that has a switch in it that lets you switch back to bings and bongs of an electromechanical era. If you play an old machine, bing, 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 that's what they sounded like. This had a switch and chimes that
bells and chimes.
Which I was like, so anyway, Williams went on a tear in the 80s. In 80, they released Firepower, which was a huge seller. Then you've got Black Knight in 80, Jungle Lord in 81, another great game. Space Shuttle in 84, which is a great game. And Comet in 85. High Speed in 86, which is a great game. It's funny, the brother of the guy that designed my game did High Speed, and he basically based it on him in a Porsche getting chased by the cops on the interstate. And I also read, just was nosing around, the people at Williams called High Speed. They had a nickname for it. It was High Spend or something like that, because it cost so much more to make that machine. Well, guess what? It sold like it was in 5 digits. So it was like a 15,000. It sold a ton of machines, so it was worth the extra money. So you also had Pinbot in 86, which really had
huge
at this point you're getting. The pinball has changed dramatically in that 6 years.
Yes.
From 79 to 85, you've got music, you've got the voices, you've got advanced rule sets that make it more interesting.
You're getting into stories now.
Yeah.
You're doing something while you're not just shooting the shots. Like in pinball, you're building the robot.
So Brent touched on this, but in 92, I'm going to skip over a little bit of the late 80s since we're going to be talking about them. In 92, Williams licensed The Addams Family. And Brent mentioned The Addams Family movie had came out in 91. So it's funny, I would not have thought of this as a huge license, but this ended up being huge. This was the highest selling pinball machine of all the times.
Yep.
With a staggering 20,270 units sold.
Yes.
That is an amazing amount of pinball machines.
I can't even imagine the production line for that.
Yeah, so the Addams Family had a DMD screen, and this was when pinball left the realm of having digital scoring like we would see on our games, for example, and went into the realm of the DMD, a digital display that has little pictures and mini game stuff that are in the display.
Right.
And the Addams Family, if it wasn't the first to do that, it was right near. It was real early.
It was early. Yeah.
So the Addams Family was super popular, and of course, we're talking about the late 80s, but really the generation of the machines we're going to be talking about sort of spawned the big generation. And the early 90s were pinball at the height of its popularity. A lot of people don't understand what that means. Pinball had been around for going on, 70 years at this point, or actually not that long.
No, it would have been
50 years.
Beginning of the World War.
And so you've got the height of it coming in the early 90s. Now get this lineup. So you had Addams Family with 20,000 units. Then you had the Twilight Zone, which is another tremendous
machine.
It's expensive, but it was, I mean, even to produce, it sold 15,000 machines, which is incredible. And then Williams never got that. Those two machines sold the most of any two machines ever. Okay, so then, but Williams still was cooking. So they won the American Amusement Machine Association's 1995 Manufacturer of the Year award. You would think so, you know. So this is what I thought was interesting. Williams also produced the Star Trek: The Next Generation pinball machine. This was
another incredible machine.
This was the last pinball machine to ever sell in excess of 10,000 units.
Yeah.
Right.
It was really the end of an era.
And so and it's also considered one of the great pinball machines of all time. It's a very popular machine.
And not just for its theme. I mean, it has good shots. It has good toys.
Now,
great machine.
I want you to ponder this. And again, we're talking the early 90s. You're selling this, and I think Star Trek came out in 93. So you're selling tens of thousands of units, or 10 to 20,000 units. In 95, they won the award. In 99, they're desperate to make money. So the drop off there, and a lot of fine machines came out in that year, but the drop off there was unbelievable, wasn't it?
It was incredible.
And it's not that the machine suddenly sucked. I don't know what happened.
Arcades started drying up. I really think that's what it was.
It was amazing. The rise of pinball, because pinball sort of, I mean, it was always around in the arcades of the 80s, you know, but it really, that resurgence was very odd. It really was. And then as quickly as it came, it went. And Williams made one last attempt to revitalize their pinball industry on their side anyway, in 99 with what was called Pinball 2000. Yeah. Pinball 2000 was a pretty interesting pinball machine with a smaller back glass, but what it basically did was it would reflect imagery on the play field from above.
Yes.
And the first machine they released for it was, unfortunately for them, was licensed off of, and this is probably what killed pinball, it was licensed off of the Phantom Menace, the Star Wars.
Well, actually, the first one was off Attack from Mars.
Oh, you're right.
That was the one which did decent.
Yeah.
And then when they released the Star Wars ones.
Yeah. Well, pinball, people didn't know how to take Pinball 2000. It was different.
It was different. Well, here's the thing with Pinball 2000. In the right lighting, it had an amazing effect. That projection down onto the playfield was really nice. But if the monitor that made the projection went out, if the environment you were playing in was very bright, it killed the effect or had no effect at all. And then you're left with a small footprint pinball machine. Because one of the things where we're going to save money by making our pinball machine smaller, and that's what people are demanding because they don't want to take up as much floor space. But you're left with this kind of dwarf pinball machine that is not great.
It's not. And I've played a couple of the Pinball 2000 machine. They made four? I think they made three. I know, and then they had one in production, I believe.
I played the Attack from Mars.
Yeah. I played that in Star Wars
excessively.
Yeah.
I played the Star Wars one a bit. And like I said, when it works, it's really neat. It's a fun concept for pinball. It could have probably done something. But I know they paid outrageous money for the Star Wars license. Yeah. And the pinball machine did not sell well. And that was it. That was it.
Paying a licensing fee to pinball machines, there was a time where it was done occasionally. Now it's done perpetually.
Yeah.
But Star Wars, the unpopularity of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace and the backlash didn't do it any favors. But I think Pinball 2000 was sort of a doomed concept. The funny thing is, if you play like a Pinball FX virtual table now, a lot of the same kind of stuff that was going on they've done in basically video form.
Sure.
In a lot of ways.
And it works better.
It does. So at that point, pinball was done at Williams. And so they closed the doors on pinball.
And almost everywhere.
Yeah, and really pinball was at that point was down to basically one manufacturer, which was Stern. And Stern, to their credit, kept the ball rolling until pinball got popular again.
Yeah, and now there's like a dozen.
Yeah, now there's a lot. There's more now than there was for a while. But at one time you had Chicago Coin, and you had Stern, and you
Oh,
had
the list is
Bally,
endless.
and you had Williams,
yeah.
and you had even Sega was in there, among
East.
others. Data East. So you had a lot of players, but it would whittle down to one. And Williams went on to manufacture slots and gambling stuff, and that's pretty much where they sit to this day.
Yes.
Now they do license their pinball machines, and for the longest time they were licensed to the Pinball Arcade people. And then I'm sure if anyone that follows pinball has probably heard this. They eventually they let that license expire, and they have recently signed up with the Pinball FX. Was it Zen? Is that Zen that makes that?
Zen Studios.
And so have their virtual versions of the machines are pretty good. And virtual versions of pinball have been around for a while. And the Williams machines translate well, a lot of them. So it's pretty interesting. So with that brief history in mind, or not so brief. Let's have a look at the games, and I'll lead the charge this week, Brent.
All right, sounds good.
I think we'll let you be the main event this week. So when we looked at what we were going to do, and we never talk about really never talk about what machines we're going to pick, and it's so funny that we ended up having to pick machines from the same company, and they had the same artist, and they were from the same general year.
Yeah, same era for sure.
So. The game I picked, and you can see the beautiful version if you're watching the video that Brent made up here, is the game Taxi. So Taxi was released by Williams in 1988. I keep reading. It says here from Internet Pinball Database, date of manufacture August 88, released on January 8th of 88. So I don't know what that means. Maybe they got it backwards.
Time machine.
Amazing. So
wasted use of the technology. Go ahead.
Of course, this was the late 80s, so this was a solid state pinball machine, and it ran on what's called the Williams System 11B board. This board was responsible. This was the brains for a lot of their machines that year. Just a few to name off that you may have heard of. Were Brent's machine this week, Earthshaker, Elvira and the Party Monsters, Space Station, and Whirlwind. So that's a pretty, and that's not all of them, but that's some of them. And Bad Cats, I must mention them.
Great game.
So the Taxi ran and was produced 7,303 units. So just over $7,000 of these were made, which is a pretty respectable number.
That's a huge number during the era.
Yeah, given that era. I mean, we've got machines that ran 1,500 or 1,200 units.
Sure.
I mean, there are plenty of machines that ran half that.
Yes.
So it's funny. It's hard to really put into words what 7,000 is quite a few.
When you get above 2,500, you've got a successful machine.
Right. So,
in my opinion,
this was a 4-player machine, which means you could play 4 players. Of course, hot seat. Obviously, it's pinball. So this game was designed by a fellow named Mark Ritchie. Now, the Ritchie family, I will say, Williams had almost all the big names in pinball for a time. And Mark Ritchie and his brother Steve were two of the big names. Steve Ritchie, as I mentioned earlier, did High Speed, among others. And he's the one that was in the car with the cops chasing him. Mark produced some great games, including one that we actually own back here. Now, if Brent can dies to the left or the right, he designed Firepower 2. He also did Big Guns. He did a game called Diner. Diners has a very similar feel to Taxi.
John's favorite pinball machine.
Yeah, Diner. It's a fun game. He did Fishtails, which again, pretty good. Indiana Jones, the Pinball Adventure. He did Kingpins, Riverboat Gambler, Road King, Slugfest, which is a popular machine, among others. He did quite a few pinball machines and quite a few in that little area there. Now, the art on this game, and Python also helped with the concept of the game. But anyway, the art was done by a very famous guy named Python Angelo. So that's his real name, I think, too. So Python Angelo, I did a little write up on him because he's such a famous guy in the pinball world that I thought I better talk about him. For one, now I didn't know any of this, by the way, but so I thought you might get a kick out of it. So for one,
because he also did the art for my game, Cyclone.
So Python was born in Transylvania.
Sure, why not?
which I think's awesome. And January 1st of 54. Okay, he studied art in Romania, and he came to the U.S. when he was 17. So get this, I didn't know any of this, so I thought this was interesting. Python was a Disney animator.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Until 1979. He went to Williams, and he took, from what I read, he took a full 1/2 pay cut to go to Williams.
Ooh. And
he went there because he was so convinced that was the wave of the future, pinball and video games, okay? And so he went there and to do the art. Python did art on a lot of stuff.
Yes.
To name a few of the machines that Python worked on here. Because I can't tell you enough how his name is revered because his art is so good. He worked on Bad Cats, Big Guns. He worked on Brent's Game. Worked on Comet, Fishtails. He worked on Pinball Circus, which was this crazy game that it never even got released. That was the last game he worked on for Williams before he left. His art is it's off the charts good. He could really go. He was a Disney animator, enough said. Right, so let's talk about the actual machine here, Taxi. Now, we're not going to get into great detail about play strategies and this stuff. We're just going to kind of give you a general overview of what Taxi is and why we like it. So, Taxi is a game that puts you in control of a taxi cab driver. Very simple concept. And your goal in this game is to pick up various riders. Now, the riders in this game are bizarre.
Yeah.
To say the least. It's quite an eclectic blend. So, the first guy you could pick up is, and you'll hear, and this game is, of course, it's digital, fully voiced. Okay?
Sure.
So, when a rider wants to be picked up, he'll yell for you.
Hey, taxi.
Hey, taxi. And so the first rider you'll pick up is Pinbot.
Yes.
Now Pinbot has his own game. So he was a special guest appearance. So Pinbot is a robot, and and he goes taxi, taxi. He's in a robot voice.
Yep.
And so what you do is when you want to pick up a rider, you will hit the target where that rider's at.
Target a ramp.
Right. Yeah. So the when you pick up Pinbot, you now have him. There's a light on the table that lights up that says, okay, he's riding with you.
Yes.
So and you don't drop these people off, really. You just they sort of all get together. So then the next rider you can pick up, which is made by hitting the ball into this little ball trap area.
Scoop. Yeah.
Is Dracula.
Yeah.
Now, I always thought that was really bizarre, but now that I know that Python was from Transylvania, it makes a lot more sense to me that you would pick up Dracula, which you've got to love that. Another guy you pick up early on, and I remember this one distinctly, Comrade Taxi, you give me ride. That's what he says. Yes. It's Mikhail Gorbachev.
Gorbachev, yeah.
Gorbachev is as a guy, you pick him up by hitting the ball up behind the very first part of the table where the ball comes down through the three little holes.
An orbital?
Yeah. And there's a hole there it goes in.
Yeah.
You pick up Gorbachev.
Saucer.
Then you can pick up, now this is where it gets a little funky. In the original version of Taxi,
gets a little
they
funky.
had Marilyn Monroe.
Yes.
And you would pick up Marilyn Monroe. She'd go, ooh, Taxi.
Yes.
Real sexy voice. And you would pick her up by knocking down some drop targets along a bank where there's a picture of her.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
and you can't do that without, because they just did it.
Yeah. Well, what happened was, apparently the estate of Marilyn Monroe. Apparently the estate of Gorbachev doesn't give a crap what happens to him, but the estate of Marilyn Monroe wasn't too keen on this. So, what had to happen was they had to change Marilyn's hair color.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what they did was they basically turned her hair red.
Yeah.
And
made her red.
And they called her Lola. Lola was her name. They changed all the, and some machines got out with Marilyn on it. These are highly prized.
Yeah.
And the machines that got out, there it was only maybe a couple hundred. They were like tester machines, you know. it's mentioned, I believe, Roger Sharp was quoted in a book, and he said the decision was made just off the artwork. Like I said, it only appears on the back glass and 2 times on the play field.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't too difficult to just change those little pieces of art. And so they ended up changing her from Marilyn Monroe to Lola. Now, why did they pick Lola? Have you ever heard why?
No.
Do you remember the song Lola?
Yes.
Lola. It's about a guy getting picked up in a bar by a transvestite. Okay?
Yeah.
A lot of people thought the back glass made Marilyn's arms look real muscular, like a man. So
that's great.
To send the point home, they named her Lola. So if you ever pick her up, you know what you're getting into, right? You're gonna pick up Lola. But I always thought I always prefer the Marilyn, but because you can, and a lot of people you can recreate. You can get different back glasses.
Yeah, because it never actually comes out and says like, "Oh, you've got Marilyn Monroe in your taxi." It's just artwork, but it was obvious who it was supposed to be.
When you pick someone up, it'll tell you at the top. Like for example, Gorbachev's called Gorby.
Yeah.
And Pinbot's Pinbot. So anyway, once you've got, so here's your taxi. You're picking these people up, and I'm just giving you a broad idea of what you do. So you've picked up Pinbot, you've picked up Dracula, you picked up Gorbachev, you've picked up Marilyn or Lola. There's only one guy left, and who else would it be but Santa Claus?
That's right.
So at the you'll hear Santa Claus go, "Ho ho, taxi!" And when you pick them up, they'll say something else. And then, of course, this is all audible cues. You can hear what's going on. So the goal of the game is to pick up all these riders. Then Taxi has a multi-ball feature where right near where Pinball is basically a ball capture. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you hit the ball up there, you'll get that ball be locked. You'll hit another ball into play. If the taxi has 2 large ramps, and you can see them. They go all the way around orbitals. They go all the way around the entire play field. If you hit, I believe it's it'd be the left orbital when you've got a ball captured. That releases the ball. Okay. Then you've got multi-ball. You got 2-ball multi-ball. It doubles the scores. So that's an added point grab right there.
Sure.
And if you've got all the passengers in your cab, added bonus. There's also ways to lock the passengers so when you lose your ball, you still keep the passengers. There's a way to do that as well. So the best part about Taxi, so when you've got this multi-ball going, again, there are 2 ball capture areas, the one with Dracula and the one with Pinbot. When you're playing 2 balls, if you can manage to get both your balls captured at the same time, the game you go into jackpot and it goes crazy.
Yeah.
And one of the things this game's got that's great, it's just got a basically like a school bell.
Yeah.
I mean, just as loud.
And it just rings
like crazy. Now, Firepower 2 has a bell in it as well, but it's nothing compared to the one in Taxi.
Yeah, Taxi was really over the top.
I mean, Taxi goes bonkers, and this thing and then the bell goes off. In Firepower 2, it goes off for like a second. You're like, ring, and you feel good. It's very similar too.
It's very satisfying.
Yeah. In Firepower 2, it's also got a big orbital spin that if you do it after you've completed getting all the drop targets, that's when you get the cool bell and there's a light that goes off. But Taxi takes that to the nth degree.
Yeah, it really does.
It goes absolutely bonkers when you do it. Taxi's got some real cool artwork. On the back glass, you're going to have the taxi cab driver, and then he's looking over the hood at all these wacky characters coming out.
And the ticker where you would have your miles driven in a real taxi is your jackpot total. It tells you how much your jackpot's going to score, which I think's really neat.
Yeah. Get this. The driver on the cab has a Special Forces patch, and Python Angelou said that was it was dedicated to the American veterans of the Vietnam War.
Huh.
So I think that was kind of cool. So Taxi has a lot in common with it's sort of a sister machine, Diner. In Diner, it's very similar. Patrons will order food, and you have to hit the target of the food they want.
Yeah.
The food combination they want. then you have to basically hit them again. And again, very similar art, very similar concepts. It's not a sequel.
No.
But it's very similar. A lot of pinball machines had what are called toppers. Right?
Yep.
Taxi had a topper. Brent's lovingly recreated it right here. It's if you can't see it at home, it's a taxi sign that sits on top. It's the taxi, the thing that sits on the car of a taxi. It sits on top
to show that it's a taxi,
and it lights up, which I always thought was cool. So the taglines for this game when they released it. One thing about the old arcade days, they always release these flyers and stuff.
Yes.
So the marketing slogans for this: the one taxi Maryland, Gorby, Santa, Dracula, and operators everywhere are hailing. I like that one. Then there's the get ready for taxi. Everyone's going to be lining up for it. That's another one. They're trying to get these guys. They're trying to get these people to play this game. Really, the taxi had another really neat aspect, and this is something that's been done before, but I don't know if it's ever been done better. Because Pinball did something similar, and that's when you launch the ball. You launch the ball into basically this like spiral, right? And the ball, and depending on how hard you hit the ball will go further up the spiral. And as you go up the spiral, you get more points. Okay. There are holes in the spiral that you want to drop the ball into. So you don't want to. If you just crush the ball, it'll go all the way around the spiral once. And I mean, basically, it's when I say spiral, it's just basically like a big round play field.
It's
like a funnel or something. And it goes around this funnel, and it counts how many times the ball goes around. And the more it goes around, the higher your score gets until you go past the highest score, and then you go down to the lowest score. Yeah. So if you just crush the ball, you will get a horrible score. And so you really have to do every shot you take with the plunger requires you to really
dial it in.
Yeah, and it's quite satisfying.
Yeah, isn't it? And it gets wah wah. It has that count up noise.
It goes wah 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 wah.
That's when you go over,
which is cool. Of course, it's got lane change ability at the top, so you can which is
common
at that point. And also one thing I should also mention, Brent touched on it briefly, is there's a ball hole, a capture hole that's up near the top lanes that will get you a jackpot. And Brent's game also has a jackpot on it. Now, Brent does it better. I'll let him talk about that. But on Taxi, when you get in that hole and the jackpot and the mystery score or whatever's lit, it just goes through a bunch of different options on the readout screen, on the scoring screen. It'll be like 100,000 points, extra ball, start special, lock pastures, and it just picks one of those randomly. So it's kind of like spinning the wheel. I've always liked Taxi. I would say if it's not my favorite pinball machine, it's amongst my favorites. There was something about this era of pinball that the just before DMD era that I always kind of dug. And like I said, Williams was on an absolute tear in this era. This game is readily available to play at home. If you want to play it on a video version, it was released on the Xbox. The original Xbox had a release, and pretty much every console after that had some way to play it. So if you wanted to play Taxi at home, you could. Believe it or not, I actually eBayed this just for laughs.
Oh yeah.
And so if you want to pick up this game right now on eBay, you can buy this game, and of course you can't buy any of them new, but they're all used. But you can buy this game in pretty good shape, $3,400.
That's what I'd expect.
You could pick up. I saw one this is what's offered. I saw one that sold for $3,200. So that means I would estimate that this game in good condition would be in around that $3,000 mark, which is a huge leap. We had a friend in the pinball community around here that had one of these, and I know he didn't pay $3,000. This was about 10 years ago. Again, just like all pinball, these have ramped up to the nines. They're incredibly expensive. So that's a look at Taxi. I think it's a great game, and I should mention that I really like the side of the cabinet with Santa Claus standing out there.
Tailing the Taxi.
Yeah, Tailing the Taxi. Just a wacky game. And I will say the wackiness does turn some people off to this, but I like it.
No, see, I don't like Taxi, but I also like Taxi. I will play Taxi. I don't like the shots in Taxi. They really bug me. I don't know why. I don't know. There's something about it that just really turns me off. Not to say that Taxi is a bad game. It's a great game. Just because I didn't like it doesn't mean it's not a good game.
It's awesome.
I prefer Diner over Taxi. I think Diner has cleaner shots.
I'm the exact opposite. I actually like Taxi more than Diner.
And I can totally. The thing that makes Taxi for me is its wacky theme.
It is wacky. It's the wackiest. I mean,
it's up there. It's definitely up there, and that's what makes it fun. There aren't a ton of shots on the game, but they all flow pretty well. Taxi plays at a decent speed. Your saucer captures are a little slow to eject, but they're not game breaking. Would I put this? I wouldn't even put this in my top 50.
Wow. Well, there you go.
But like I said, it's not because it's a bad game. Because it's not a bad game. It's a very good game. It's just not a game for me.
I'm not even gonna fight you. I'm just gonna let your own words speak for themselves.
Well, I mean, that's what it is. So, shall we move on?
Yes, please do.
All right.
What do you got for us this week, Brinster?
I have Cyclone.
All right.
Cyclone Pinball, designed by Barry Osler, and the artwork by Python, as you mentioned earlier. Cyclone kind of is part of a trilogy that wasn't actually going to be a trilogy. It just happened to end up that way. Its predecessor is a game called Comet. Comet is actually... A lot of people think that this Comet and then Cyclone, my game, and the third in the trilogy is Hurricane. They think that this is based off of Coney Island stuff. It's not. The actually is based off of Riverview Park in Chicago, which is an amusement park that sat across the river from Williams until it shut down.
No kidding. I'd never heard that.
So, Riverview shut down in 1967, and they were actually going to name Comet Riverview after the amusement park. But it obviously is still in that same vein. Coney Island is probably the most famous amusement park. So it follows that formula, but Riverview is actually what it was based on. In Comet, boy, I've got talking about Comet now. I'm all messed up. Cyclone has a lot of voices in it, and the voices are done by your developer, Mark Ritchie.
Awesome.
And
does he play the carnival barker?
He does. The carnival barker does all the taglines of where he wants you to shoot, tries to get you to play. We'll go into that a little bit more. What's kind of funny about that is he's uncredited. He gave an interview, way after the fact that he said, "Yeah, I'm actually the one that does the voices for the game," because it was unknown who did it for the longest time. The reason why this is important in something besides pinball is Mr. Bungle, a band probably most famous for their feud with Red Hot Chili Peppers, has taken samples of the game voices and put them into their song Carousel. Mr. Bungle, if you haven't heard of them before, they're sort of a alternative rock, but not like you're thinking. Experimental rock is probably the better way of putting it. They go through a lot of tones. They kind of have a skull feel, and then they'll go into heavy metal, and then they'll go into jazz, and it's all in one song. They weren't wildly popular, but I actually like some of their
College
stuff.
music.
No.
No.
But Carousel is the song that has some audio clips from Cyclone. It's a pretty decent song, worth checking out. But more onto the actual game itself. Comet was produced in 1988, released in February. Like I said before, the game before it, Comet, was released in 85, and the sequel to it was Hurricane in 91. Cyclone and all three games are a amusement park simulator in pinball. It's all about riding the rides, eating the candy, shooting the ducks in the gallery, going through the haunted house. It's a fun time, and that really is what calls all the shots. The game plays fast, and it plays hard in some cases, in my opinion. But it has one thing that a lot of people hate: the Ferris wheel.
Really?
And the reason why a lot of people hate it is it actually stops the action.
It does.
When you get on the Ferris wheel, and the Ferris wheel is a very neat concept.
It's a physical item.
It is, yeah. The game has a toy that it picks up your ball, and it actually rotates it about 180 degrees, picking it off the play field and eventually dumping it down a ramp. But it stops the flow of the game. When you're on the ride, there's nothing to do. You have to just kind of wait. And it only takes 2 or 3 seconds, but it does stop the action. And a lot of people fault Cyclone for that. Other shots in the game, you can ride the Cyclone, of course. You can go into the haunted house, which is, oddly enough, barked on by Dracula standing out front.
Dracula making another appearance. I'd wager the same guy did the voice, too.
The skill shot in this, as you mentioned, yours was a big funnel that goes around.
Yeah.
This is one of those speed trains, monorail, where you shoot the ball. It has about 5 places it can go into. It goes up the monorail. If you're going to go in like the 4th one, it gets the most points. So if you shoot it too hard, again, you get less points. If you shoot it too easy, it falls into the hole beforehand and gets onto the play field.
I like that. I mean, I think that's another good. I don't think it's as good as the funnel, but I think that was a little more common. The one
it was a lot more common,
but it is an interesting, and also I like the animation that the train as it goes by on the little score pad. It makes a noise. Yeah, it shoots off.
Cyclone it doesn't have a DMD as a back glass, but it has a lot of animations on the, what are those called? Can you recall?
There's just a little digital score.
It kills me. I can't actually remember the name of those. Anyway, they're the 8-line number pad, and it has animation on it. There you go. He's pointing it out for you. It does lots of little animations of, like Aaron said, the train going by. Riding the Cyclone actually has some animations on it.
So I think it's pretty much the same one.
But that's a good use of the technology for the time, because they didn't have a way to really do the DMD display.
Probably should mention that riding the Cyclone is just basically the ball coming down a real twisty ramp.
Well, it's more than that. There is on the right-hand side of the field, there is a serpentine ramp that goes back and forth that your ball just rides in. And it makes a very satisfying click, 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 click as it goes down, just as it's bouncing off the plastic. And 2 ramp shots actually utilize that section of the ramp, which is kind of neat. When you ride the Cyclone, it's a huge, almost 360 ramp that hits and then falls into the serpentine ramp that funnels the ball down to your out lane for you to make another shot. Very neat concept, very well designed. I do like the design of Cyclone, mainly because it keeps funneling the ball back to you, and I like that. If you shoot it into the haunted house, it uses subway rails to shoot the ball back at your flippers, and it gives you plenty of warning. Some of these games, it just shoots at such high speed it knocks you out.
Yeah.
Another neat feature with Cyclone is its back glass. It has a large spin the wheel type affair.
Yeah. Animated.
Yes. Well, no. It's a physical thing.
Right,
okay.
It moves.
Yes. Yeah. You mean animated as in it moves, yes. It spins whenever you go into the haunted house that's lit, and will give you a mystery reward. And they actually have it smartly coded, so if your wheel isn't working, which wasn't common, but there certainly does happen, pinball malfunctions, it's still on the display of your score, cycles through the awards you could get. So it's kind of spinning on the digital display.
It's similar to what Whodunit does. Our Whodunit has basically a slot machine wheels in it, and you can turn them on and off, or if they go bad.
Right. And that is how you get your jackpot. Well, it's obviously more complicated than just that, but it's a series of shots. Cyclone, very uncommon for the time. did not have multi-ball. No multi-ball in Cyclone. It's a one-ball game. And a lot of people fault that for an era that was really working with multi-ball, for it not to have it was pretty surprising. But the reason why is the Ferris wheel. Because you could shoot 2 balls up there and jam it up.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, yeah.
And it would be bad times. You know what Cyclone, among anything else, might be the most famous for, Aaron? Do you know this?
The back glass.
Well, the back glass is pretty up there. Since you mentioned it, we'll go ahead and talk about the back glass. The back glass depicts Ronald Reagan, Nancy Reagan, and their dog at the time, whose name fails me, predominantly on the back glass.
Yeah.
And they're riding a roller coaster, and it looks like they're having a really good time.
They're like the front or second seat, as I recall.
The front, they're the absolute front, yeah. And there's no mistaking. They really didn't even try to hide it. No. It is certainly them. Very predominantly on the back glass.
Both these games scream late 80s.
It does.
What was going on with Gorbachev and all this stuff? They weren't messing around.
Yes. No, but the most famous thing about Cyclone that really some people might not think about, it had the first 1 million point shot.
Oh, yes, I do remember that shot, yes.
So why is that important? This started an era of bigger numbers means better pinball.
Yes, it did.
And it has gotten to the point where it's complete lunacy.
Yeah.
Studies found that scoring more points made you more likely to play a game again. And because of that, you started seeing 1 million point shots, which a 1 million point shot before this, some games counted up by 1. If you go way back, getting a score like 110 was a remarkable game.
We had a game that was an EM that it had 5 rolls, and then once you rolled over, just a light would come on.
Yeah.
It would say like 100,000 light. And that was common back in those days. They because they didn't want to put in multiple reels for that. So they would never. The shots were always like 10, 40, something like that.
So for a game to have a 1 million point shot was a big deal. And after this, of course, now you'll have shots, 1 billion point shots in some pinball machines. I don't like the jackpot for or a really impressive game for like Mars Attacks is 2 or 3 billion points. And it was all because they found in research that higher scores make people want to play again.
That's bizarre. I never knew why. I knew it happened, but I wasn't sure why.
Something else that's kind of strange. Most pinball machines, they might get audio changes when they go overseas or are sold in different markets.
Mm-hmm.
Cyclone actually had a changed part of the machine. In the Japanese market, the back glass no longer has that spinning wheel. It has a light show instead, where it just has the picture of the wheel and
I've seen
12 lights behind it.
Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So that is an alternate, and it is unknown how many were made like that. And it was suspected that the mechanics on the wheel, the spinning wheel, would break often enough that it was a problem. You mentioned numbers. The production number on Cyclone, really high, 9,408.
Wow. Yeah.
This was the most popular of the trilogy of the 3 pinball machines. Mm-hmm. Not by a huge margin. Just since I have it here, Comet sold 8,100, and Hurricane is not listed. So I guess we don't have a confirmed number for Hurricane, but I do know it is less than Cyclone because Cyclone is the most money-making of the bunch. Is there any aspect of Cyclone that I'm really missing out on? I mean, you've got your ramps.
Did you talk about the stuff the Barker says? Because that's really funny.
The Barker. You know how when you're at a carnival and you're passing by things and they want you to play their midway games, you always got a guy that is trying to get you to come over. This game's no different. And the Barker kind of gives you directionals on what to shoot. He'll tell you, ride the Ferris wheel, Ride the Cyclone. It kind of gives you an audio clue as long as the visual cues of the flashing lights. But sometimes she'll just be like, "You, sir, you, madam, you there with the face."
Yeah, that's my favorite one.
Famous line from
it.
You
with the face.
And it was a good concept.
Yeah,
it was a fun concept.
When I think of the game, that's one of the first things that comes to my mind.
Really?
Is that Barker? Well, I mean, he sounds just like an old like Barker you would hear at the Midway, you know.
That's very true.
Also, you with the face.
Yeah.
Hey, kid. You know, that's another one. You know, I like that guy.
And it's nice to have visual and audio cues on what you're supposed to shoot. And he's not over the top.
Yeah, it would be like, ride the Ferris wheel, ride the Cyclone, you know, something like that. And that sort of concept would carry on later on. Like Funhouse comes to mind. Hey, how about a hot dog? Hey, why don't you do this? They're telling you, they're helping you with an audible cue.
And it's nice because you don't have to be continuously looking at the playfield trying to search for what you're trying to do. Yeah. Speaking of the playfield, and this is actually the reason why I don't like Cyclone.
Oh, okay.
I picked it because I know it's an awesome game and it deserves recognition and the 1,000,000-point shot.
Yeah.
I feel the playfield art is too busy.
It is very busy.
Python
went bonkers on this thing.
If you have a way of seeing the playfield of Cyclone, it looks like a busy amusement park. And by busy, I mean there are dozens, if not hundreds, obviously not hundreds, but up to 100 little men, women, and children drawn on the playfield.
It's amazing the amount of
the details that
Python went to create this overhead view.
Yes.
Of and the people are multicolored, and you really have to get in there and look. If you don't pay attention, it almost looks like specks or just flashes of color.
Sure.
But these are the many people. But what it does is the playfield is the most from an art perspective. It's one of the most full playfields I've ever seen.
Without question. And it's so much so that it's distracting to me. It is hard for me to look at to where I'm supposed to be shooting because I'm distracted by the art.
It can be. And I noticed in the home versions of this, if that varies depending on how your resolution and stuff. Yeah. I've noticed that actually this is one of the games that I like playing at a much higher resolution because I think there's a differential that you can see a little bit easier than you get on your television when you're playing this game because of the busyness of the playfield.
Fun fact, this is my wife's favorite pinball machine.
I believe it. I'm surprised you don't like it.
No. That's not fair. It's not that I don't like it. It's that it's almost painful for me to play because the art's so distracting.
But this is one of my all-time faves. Okay, we just had to pick two of my faves this week.
I knew you really loved Taxi.
I love Cyclone a lot. In fact, I thought about doing Cyclone myself. Cyclone is a fun game. It's easy to understand. It's much like Taxi. It's easy. This is a machine that anyone can come up and play, but you can't master it until it takes a while. Cyclone is very similar. You have to hit the shots in a certain way. You have to time things. Like, for example, the Funhouse, if you don't get in there quick enough, it shuts. You have to knock down there's a drop target that sits in front of it.
A Dracula target, yeah.
I like the audio. It's probably, for me, the weakest element of the Cyclone is the back glass. And I always say that it's because that the wheel is such a dominant force back there. I mean, if you compare the two back glasses, Taxi's got that large, beautiful, hilarious back glass. Cyclone, with the exception of the Reagan stuff on the side, it's just that the wheel dominates it more fully, and you can't.
I can understand that.
And you don't. So I'd like to have seen. I could have done without the wheel. I could have done the mystery thing just like Taxi did it. Just use that space for some really nice art. But that's nitpicking. I like the shots. I love the Ferris wheel. I love that. I always thought that was an awesome gimmick, toy.
And if you look at the stickers on the Ferris wheel, since you brought it up, it actually is a 4-panel animation of a couple who are setting apart, then they're setting closer together, then they're holding hands, and then they're kissing.
Yeah.
So it has little story elements like that throughout the entire machine. You can look at different elements of the playfield and actually see little stories kind of acting themselves out.
This era of pinball is one of the last. It's really the last pinball era before games got really mission based.
Yeah.
You know, complex and mission based. You know, I mean, with like multiple storylines going on and stuff. And so there's something to be said about a pick up and play game where you don't have to, you know, suffer through the same cut scenes or whatever over and over. You just go. There's no baloney. And this is these are games that are these are straight up pinball, no baloney. Which I mean, I like that. Now, don't get me wrong, the new ones were unbelievable, but these two games are perfect examples of just what was great about pinball.
Sure.
The fact I like this one more than Comet. I like the three. This is my favorite,
and it was most popular.
I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I just like the way it looks and plays. So I will take this one every day of the week. I like the stenciled Williams art. It's your classic Defendery sort of art color scheme.
Yes.
You know
that red, yellow, black.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, but I give both these an enthusiastic thumb up, and both these would probably be my top. At least Taxi I like more, but Cyclone I like a lot. They'd both probably be my top 10. I mean, I love them.
Top
both.
10,
absolutely.
I would probably.
I'm a traditionalist, y'all.
I would probably have Cyclone in my top 25.
Sure. I see a show coming on someday where we'll go down and argue about our favorite pinball machines.
Well, see, I like the mission-based machines. I like the story-based machines. Being able to play this today, it's a little more tricky than it used to be. This used to be part of the Pinball Arcade Collection.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they lost that license, so you can no longer purchase it through that. There are discs that still have this game on it that you can go and buy used. If you're not familiar with it, somewhere like an emulation like Future Pinball,
or Virtual
Pinball, both have really good recreations of this table.
You've just got to have the chutzpah to install and use them. They're not easy to use.
They're not just pick up and do. You do have to put a little effort into it.
Theoretically, this will be released at some point by the Zen people.
Correct.
You know.
Correct. It was released in the 4th pack, and I don't think they're going down any kind of line for the Zen recreations. So I don't know if that means anything. But
as of the recording of this, though, it's not currently available
for download,
unless you already own it. So
correct,
but it'll come around.
Price for this machine, a little less than Taxi, but not by much. The average price for it runs about $2,700, which I think is a very fair price for a working good condition of this machine.
Sure,
it has a lot of toys and moving parts in the back glass on the playfield. That are unique to the machine. The ramps are very unique to the machine. For a long time, no one reproduced these ramps. So if you had a cracked one, you were out of luck.
They've got some very difficult to reproduce ramps.
However, they do reproduce these now. So if you do have a cracked one, you can get reproductions of it.
3D printers have revolutionized parts.
You can't 3D.
You can print but I'm not those ramps. Yeah, you can, but not that ramp. No. I would say it's impossible.
Really, I guess the only thing else I want to say about the machine, for a trilogy of pinball, which is never done, I can't think of any other 3 pinball machines that they actually say this is the sequel to this, this is the sequel to this. Comet, Cyclone, Hurricane are all decent machines. So if you're out there and you ever see one to play, for sure drop a quarter in it.
Absolutely. You know, before we move along to spin the wheel, I want to give you some props on these models. I don't know if people even knew these are models. And Brent put these together. Show them yours, Brent. The detail in that is unbelievable. This guy's a pro, y'all.
I know.
He's a pro.
I'm just starting. I've enjoyed this. I was hoping to get it done because I did these, the week before the show. I'm getting better.
I'm
getting better.
Don't get me wrong. You're still a hunk of garbage and doesn't know a good pinball machine. And on that note, hit my music.
Oh. All right, let's get some wheel action out here.
Move those.
I think we put it right in the middle. Let's see.
So what have we added this week, Brent?
Oh,
there we go.
We added the Apple logo, and we have decided that it's going to be a Mac release game.
Mac Classic.
Mac release game.
So, Brent, spin the wheel.
I'm hoping for not Mac.
We had a good time on Apple.
I did, yeah. Oh, Williams, holy moly. Let's see what we do here. Now, for Williams, it has to be a video game release. Very famous Williams, not only did they do pinball, they were huge into the video game releases. And that is what we'll be picking today, a Williams video game release.
What are the odds? A week that we both pick Williams pinball machines, then the very next week we would get Williams the video games. So, it's a double dose, much like Comet, much like Cyclone. We're going to have a two-peat, and we're going to be going into Williams video games. Now, they did make a lot of video games.
Yes.
Some were more popular than others.
Yes.
And so, it will be interesting to go over, and we'll take a look at the video game side of Williams too.
Yeah, and let me tell you something. They have a rich history on the video game side as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting history piece for sure.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us for some pinball action, and we will see you next week from some Williams. Brent, until then,
out
lane.
Hurry, hurry. Ride the Ferris wheel.
Welcome to my house.